All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to be able to introduce to you today Brian Rupp from Shopoff Realty Investments, Dennis Vaccaro from ValueRock, and Jamas Gwilliam from Melone Geier, who all have projects that are somewhere in process, mall redevelopment, including housing, somewhere in Orange County. And I'm very grateful to be able to bring them to you today. The impetus for this webinar is really the fact that redeveloping commercial real estate is one of the best ways that we can integrate new housing, which we all know is much needed in Orange County, into existing communities. And how do we knit this new housing stock into our communities when we definitely have established neighborhoods that are sensitive to the introduction of new housing stock. Before the pandemic in 2019, the Orange County Business Council published a report they called the E-Tail Revolution. And in that report, they talked about the decline of commercial real estate, and they advocated for using those sites and replacing declining commercial with housing, and said it was one of the best opportunities to add housing. And that was a report that was actually about retail. It wasn't even about housing. So, and that report came out before the pandemic. So certainly all the more post-pandemic, when we know that businesses no longer need as much floor space as they did in the past, when folks have realized how much actually can be accomplished working a couple of days from home, it really just offers us the opportunity to repurpose that land. So with that as the setting, I'm going to go ahead and invite Brian Rupp to talk about the projects that Shopoff is working on, and I'm going to share some slides of their project. All right, and I'll mute myself. Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And just a reminder, if you're not muted, if you would please mute. I promise I will do the same. I happen to be in transit at the Phoenix airport, so I apologize in advance for any background noise that I may have. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Rupp. I'm the Executive Vice President of Shopoff Realty Investments. We are an Irvine, California-based real estate investment and development company. We've been in business for 31 years, and we've done a lot of different things over the years, but as Elizabeth mentioned, the focus here today is repurposing the aging malls and creating new housing stock in Orange County. We have 4 active projects underway at Shopoff Realty Investments. What is featured here is the Westminster Mall, where we own 26 acres of that mall, and I'll go into some details there. But just as an aside, some of the other projects that we have underway, we just received approvals earlier this year on a 113 unit mixed use development, converting a neighborhood retail center in Fullerton, California. And that is moving forward to the next phase with development and partnering with a home builder on that. We also own the former Nordstrom's big box in downtown Santa Barbara, at the Paseo Nuevo Mall in downtown Santa Barbara. And we own the Nordstrom's building at the Pleasanton Mall, which is an interesting dynamic there, because unlike the Westminster Mall, where it's completely dead, you could shoot a cannon through the mall and it wouldn't hit a person. But the Pleasanton Mall is interesting because it is functioning, it is relatively healthy, but the big box stores are shuttering there. So we'll turn our attention here to the Westminster Mall a little bit, and Elizabeth can show the photos. This is a photo of one of the apartment buildings that we're proposing. We acquired the Macy's and Sears portions of the property in 2022, and those total about 26 acres, which is a pretty good scale. As relative scale, we did a mixed use infill development in Newport Beach that was 5 acres, and that had 1,200 units of housing. So very similar scale here. We are proposing about 1,100 multifamily apartment units, which will have an affordable component. And then we're also proposing about 100 for sale townhome units on a portion of the property. We really like this site. Again, there's a picture, another picture of the rendering, seeing the apartments in the background. As part of the project and the development, the city put forth the requirement for park space and trails, which is excellent. We really believe in providing those spaces. So in addition to our development work, we're going to develop a public park. This is a 2.5 acre park. It will be open to the public. We are also creating a network of trails and connectivity. We are, that's a shot showing a public market hall. We'll have dining opportunities and retail opportunities on site. One of the things that the city felt was important was to continue to have retail. And, you know, all cities act differently here and there's politics in play, but the city wanted to have this requirement for the entire mall to repurpose an additional 600,000 square feet of retail, which we felt was way too much retail moving forward. You want quality retail. You don't want excess retail. But we are able to add some retail here, and then the city allowed for us in the specific plan to offset the retail use with hotels. And so we're proposing a 175 key hotel, and that will offset 175,000 square feet of the retail requirement out of the 600,000 square foot total for the entire mall, for the entire redevelopment site. The mall itself, the site is approximately 90 acres, and the balance of the mall is owned, the majority is owned by Washington Prime Group, and there's also a small piece owned by a local apartment developer. Kaiser Permanente owns a piece on the north side, and then Best Buy also owns a parcel. The thing we really like about the Westminster Mall is that the city initiated this action. Oftentimes, we as the developer, we're going in up front. We have to change the zone, do a general plan amendment, do an EIR, and as you all know, that's a tremendous amount of work. The city did that for us. They put the framework together. We may not have agreed on all points, but they started the process. So now, as of January, the city council approved the specific plan. For those of you who don't know what a specific plan is, it's site-specific zoning, meaning that the city created a special zoning district just for the Westminster Mall and to redevelop the mall. So that's very exciting. And we're able to have our development adhere to all of those requirements in the specific plan. So they took a big step of the process out for us. We submitted, about 2 months ago, we submitted an application for our site development review, an SB 330 application. So we're utilizing some of that state legislation to help ensure that we get through the process. And that's been deemed accepted by the city. So we're off to the races and hope to have our final development approvals in place late 2024, early 2020, or late 2023, early 2024. Elizabeth, do you or any of the other panel members have any questions on the project?
I have not seen any questions come in yet. I think I'm going to wait until the end to pitch the questions, but I would love to invite Jamas, if you'd like to unmute and start sharing. I'll stop sharing. Let's see. Oh, we do have a couple of questions. Let's see. So just quickly, what are the parking requirements and how much retail did you include?
So the parking requirements, I'm not going to remember them off the top of my head, but we did get some parking concessions, so we're not doing the city standard. We also have the benefit of asking for a waiver under.
Oh, I think we might have lost you.
So,
Oops. Okay, there we go. Okay, we can come back to that. Jamas, if you'd like to go ahead and share, that would be great.
Apartments.
Oh.
And out of those apartments, 100 were affordable. We went into the city and did a study showing how much parking we would need, and we're able to reduce our parking requirements by a half a space per unit. So I think a similar thing will happen here. What was the other question again?
The other question was how much retail I think the square footage on the
Yeah.
retail.
We're the city wants an overall 600,000 square feet for the site. We're going to fulfill our retail obligation with about 200,000 square feet of retail. We have a public market hall, which is about 25,000 square feet, 175 key hotel. And so for those 175 rooms, we get a credit against our retail requirement of 1,000 square feet per room. So we get that satisfies 175,000 square feet. And then we also have some just modest ground level retail planned into the multifamily buildings.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Brian. There was a question. I might have forgotten to introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Hansberg, and I'm the co-founder and director of People for Housing. Someone asked what the name of the organization was hosting. We were founded out of the YIMBY, or the Yes in My Backyard movement, in January of 2017, and have been advocating for the full spectrum of housing at multiple income levels. We're really interested in seeing multifamily, affordable workforce housing, and near and dear to my heart is first-time home buyer opportunities for young professionals and folks who grew up in Orange County and would like to stay here. So that's just a little background on our organization. Jamas, take it away, please.
Okay. I'm going to run a video in the background while I'm kind of introducing the firm, and that way you guys can watch and become acquainted with one of the projects that we'll talk about, which is the Village Laguna Hills. So I'll run this in the background. So want to make sure, you see the video that's running? Yeah, thumbs up. Okay, good. So Melone Geier Partners, we've been in business about 28 years. Basically a value add retail, grocery anchored, drug anchored, shopping center focused business. And we've acquired about 16 million square feet over that time horizon. And a large component of owning retail centers, you can imagine, is doing exactly what we're talking about today, because the highest and best use isn't always retail in a lot of these centers. And that's what I focus on. We have about 10 large scale redevelopments that are occurring across our portfolio from the Canada to Mexico border. We're focused exclusively on the West Coast. And within that, we have, 1, 2, 3, or 5 malls that we're redeveloping, or at least portions of malls, and 4 Sears boxes. So Brian and his firm sounds like they have a relationship with Nordstrom. We have a relationship with Sears, where we're seeing that a higher and better use for Sears is absolutely housing in most instances. So in Orange County specifically, the projects that we have going on are the Village Laguna Hills, the former Laguna Hills Mall, which you can see the video that's running here. We have a 15-year development agreement that was approved in March of last year for that 60+ acre site. We're working through finalizing our map there and beginning our initial horizontal improvements. You can see the site here is arguably one of the best locations in Orange County. We have significant scale to work from here, including 1,500 residential units. As part of that entitlement, there was 460,000 square feet of office space. Fortunately, given the duration of our development agreement and the phasing requirements, we have some ability to work through and decide what that wants to be. If that remains office, I think it's a bit to be determined, given the state we are in for the office market currently. Again, that's part of the reason why we negotiate these long-term development agreements. The majority of these projects is for things such as COVID that happen, and now what we're seeing with the office space disruption. The other project that we'll talk about is the Village at Buena Park. So we also own 25 acres on the end cap of the mall across from Knott's Berry Farm. This is an active entitlement. We're going to city council a week from today for this project. And what we're proposing here is a 1,300 unit redevelopment. There will be no retail included in this project, given the amount of retail that's remaining at the mall that we do not own. So 126 for sale townhomes and 1176 apartments in four different wrap buildings with about an acre public park that'll be in the middle of those units, and then a shared service parking lot now in the southeast corner of the property. You can see this is from the corner of La Palma looking at that Sears versus what you'll see here. I think the city had great foresight in their general plan update in 2010. They designated this property for 80 dwelling units to the acre, which would yield about 2,000 units. For various reasons, mainly construction typology, we are not maxing out those 2,000 units. The 1,300 units makes the most sense. We also placed those for sale townhomes at the south end of the property as a buffer from the low-rise single family residences to the south. But this property is located, I'll go back to the map here. These are two major arterials. This is a primary arterial on La Palma, secondary on Stanton, within 5 different bus routes, plenty of jobs, services, amenities. This is exactly where you want to place density and where you want to place housing. The city's arena allocation for the 2021 to 2029 planning horizon was 8,900 units. So this places a significant dent in their arena allocation, as you would imagine. We can talk more about, what we see as the impediments and the challenges that at least we've experienced in redeveloping mall properties in particular, but just retail in general. And the ones I would just touch on at every property, the existing encumbrances between REAs, adjacent owners that are not a part of a redevelopment, and then the leasehold encumbrances are some of the most significant things that we have to deal with. So a lot of times, fortunately, I think as Brian mentioned, we see these cities that are being proactive in paving a path for housing and densification to occur. It's greatly appreciated when that is addressed, or at least there's a programmatic EIR, or there's something that paves the way for the development to move forward, because on the back end, what the city doesn't get involved with are the private property and private owner tenant negotiations that have to occur with a lot of these large scale tenants, and those are not insignificant. A lot of times those are even more challenging than dealing with a city where the city may recognize the need. Most of the cities we're seeing recognize the need for the housing. So I'll leave it at that and let the other presentation happen, and then happy to jump in and answer questions as they come through.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, we've gotten a couple, but I think I'm going to hold them because I think I'd love to have all of your feedback on these 2 questions. Dennis, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Okay. Let's see. Will I be able to share my screen now? Let's see here. Okay, can we see that? Okay, great. So my name is Dennis Vaccaro. I'm a managing principal here at ValueRock Realty. We're an Orange County-based investor and developer. We've been around for about 30 years. Our primary portfolio is about 5 million feet of existing property, primarily in Orange County and Hawaii. We also have a very large project under development in Deer Valley, Park City. And we also own properties throughout the country. But our home is South Orange County primarily, one of the largest retail owners in South Orange County. And this project you're looking at right here is our Aliso Viejo Commons property. And in this project, it's a two-phased partial redevelopment of what was formerly the Lowe's anchored building on Aliso Creek Road up against the 73 toll road. And then activation in phase 2 of the building you see in front of you there, the apartment project. And the apartment project we brought on and partnered with Avalon Bay Communities. They're the principals, or two of the principals involved with this project are both on vacation this week, so they're unable to join us. They are, that's why you see Avalon Bay here. They're a partner in this project in phase 2, which is activation of a vacant parking lot. I'm sure many of you are familiar of this site. It's never been improved. And it's excess parking that's been totally underutilized since the property goes all the way back to the days when it was a super Kmart, and then Lowe's came in after that, and it's always been an underutilized site. And so we are in the midst, probably several of you are aware that we are already well on our way of redeveloping the former Lowe's building right here. And what we're doing in that building is we are turning that into a mixed use multi-tenant project. So what do I mean by that? We have on the side of the building that used to be the garden center that you couldn't see from Aliso Creek Road is now going to be a front facing 99 Ranch supermarket. So that building is now that piece of the project is actually going to face Aliso Creek Road. So we've taken the four walls of the building and left those in place, but we're reoriented, so to speak, with creating openings and turning the former garden center into that new parking lot you see in front of you there in front of the 99 Ranch. Then on the other end of the property, we have finished a lease for a 54,000 foot Tesla sales and service center. That is, for those of you who are familiar with the site, that's where the Michaels used to be on the back corner of the property. And Tesla is now you're going to be, as a Tesla customer, you're going to pull in where you see that red car, you're going to pull up to that building right there. And then the service team will take your car and pull it into the building and do the required services necessary. Then at the back of the project, where some of you are familiar with, the back parking lot, where Tuesday Morning used to be, that'll be Tesla's private reserved parking area for services and sales delivery. And this will also be a sales delivery center. So you can walk in, there'll be model cars out in the front end of the project. And so it's to be a full sales and service of Tesla. We are working on additional leases in the building. I can announce that this unit here is Daiso. They're coming soon next year. And we just signed a lease with a company called Cinder One here, which is a climbing facility. It's a climbing gym. That's a segment of commercial retail projects that's really taking off right now. And we're excited to add them to the family. This corner here, which I'll show you this slide. We're completely reimagining the building on that corner, as that's their entrance to the building. And that corner is going to be food and beverage tenants. We brought in what we call the cherry tree effect, where the architecture is going to be very unique for South Orange County. Those touches, that's going to be an indoor, outdoor bar restaurant effect on the corner. So we've taken what was formerly the Lowe's and Michaels, and we're well on our way of redeveloping what we call phase 1 into that tenant mix. Here's kind of a shot aerial of what we're referring to there. Then phase 2 is in this zone here. There's 4 acres in this area here that has never been utilized. And just frankly, it is the perfect site in Aliso Viejo for an apartment building. It is, again, underutilized property. We're not knocking down anything. We are bringing an element to anchor not only the commons and its retail, but the town center across the street with 362 unit apartment building. Again, this is being led by our partner Avalon Bay, to bring a live, work, play environment to Aliso Viejo, an environment that does not exist in Aliso Viejo today. And that many people are encourage us to proceed. And this literally, if this site doesn't work for someone to support as an apartment building in Aliso Viejo with its ability, with its walkability, and with its total non-interference with anybody else, then you basically don't want any housing anywhere in Aliso Viejo. Just to be frank about it, this is the perfect site in our humble opinion, but this is the outline of where that would be. Let me hold on a second. Sorry. This is the project here. You can notice Avalon Bay and their architects are tying into our commercial building here with the same aesthetic effects, including the tree effect at the entrance. So it's going to look like one single project, right? It's going to be tied together so that it looks and feels as one community, if you will. Now, our project obviously is a remodel and it is entitled. This we just submitted, Avalon Bay just submitted application here in April. So we're a long ways off on this one. And we project to be in front of City Council in early 2024, seeking approval of the project at that point in time. Here's a view from the corner of Aliso Creek and Enterprise. A lot of you are familiar with the existing Trader Joe's building right there. And while I have the opportunity, obviously, like I said, we're early on in the project and we need support. And there's a QR code there on the screen. And, you know, if you're willing and able to support the project from communicating with the city officials, but also there's the link to the website that's constantly maturing on the project. We invite you to please join in our efforts to help support the project. And I think
what's the website that folks can go to if they don't?
Yeah, right here, www.avalonalisoviejo.com.
Great, awesome. You're like me. So I'm going to go ahead and plug next week in Buena Park. If you are a Buena Park worker or a Buena Park resident, you have an opportunity to put your advocacy into action and come and join me at the Buena Park City Council meeting, where we will be advocating for this project, which is going to add a lot of new housing, much needed housing, in a way that is, I don't even want to use the words respectful of the existing neighborhood, but for lack of a better words, respectful of the existing neighborhoods in this community. Brian, do you have any projects, since we're shamelessly pulling for voices to get in the yes chorus? Do you have any voices or any projects you want to plug?
Well, you know, we are going to Fullerton tonight to get a community facilities district reapproved. That was approved before, but I think we're in good shape there. Nothing on the horizon here, but I just will anecdotally just share a story with the group here. Last night I was at a city council meeting in Mesa, Arizona, where we have a large 270-acre master plan. It's different. It's manufacturing and industrial uses, but our project with Shopoff, another large master plan, and I think about 1,200 residential units were approved on consent calendar with 0 public comment last night. So I think that might have a little something to do with why you can buy a house in Arizona for around $500,000.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah,
exactly.
I actually want to say, as an advocate and someone who wants to encourage civic engagement, the idea of doing things on consent is challenging.
Well,
but
it was interesting because they have a study session. Everything's presented, but the point is no public opposition showed up, which obviously is very different here because we need the YIMBYs to go out, and I think that's very important. So I would say to everyone, get involved in organizations. It doesn't have to be YIMBY. It doesn't have to be necessarily even housing related, but get involved in Homemade or Habitat for Humanity. and get involved and support the projects that you feel good projects. We like to do repeat businesses in the cities where we do business, and we like to deliver quality projects, as do Dennis and James. And I think what you've seen here today is a great example of what can happen. And there's more opportunities out there.
Awesome. So I will just say that you are more than welcome at here in Orange County's YIMBY organization. We would love to have you. So please don't overlook us. But I agree that Homemade and Habitat are definitely great organizations doing affordable housing, which is actually a perfect segue. We have gotten a lot of questions about the number and the level of affordability, and was that a requirement of the city? How did you come to those? Those numbers? I would also like, and then there was another question about well, actually, it wasn't even first time home buyer. That's my love. About, you know, the ratio of affordable, tenure, owner opportunities versus rental opportunities. So if you would like to speak to that, and I'll just say, you know, this is where, you know, we'll just share that, you know, I think we have a lot of academic studies that show that housing filtration is real. And in an unencumbered market, we would see that filtration actually happening at much more of a rapid clip. We also have a lot of lived experience from the residents that are, you know, the ones that are really bearing the brunt of the housing shortage in terms of housing instability, rents they can't afford. And so, you know, we need all of it. We need all the housing that we can get. And whatever we can do to encourage more affordable housing and certainly more subsidies, because we know that this stuff is not going to build itself. We do need the support. So with that said, does anybody want to take on the question of the number and level of affordability and how you arrived at those choices?
Yeah, I can jump in. At Buena Park, the city was actually concerned about providing too much capital A subsidized affordable housing, given the relatively affordable nature of their housing stock, existing housing stock. However, there was a desire for sort of the missing middle. So we're doing 15% of our rental units will be set aside for 10% of those will be moderate. So up to 120% AMI, and then 5% will be at low income. So not very low income, but at low income. And that was really driven by the city, and it was baked into the DA as a result of what their housing needs assessment, really what the feedback said they needed. And then at Laguna Hills, we have 200 units. So a little under 15% of the units are at low income.
Oh, at the low income level.
Yeah.
Okay. And can you talk about the ratio or just how you arrived at the percentage of homeowner opportunity versus rental opportunity?
Yeah. Some of it was, a lot of it comes down to site dimensions. It kind of starts with a for sale townhome product. You typically want something over 75 dwelling units, but the densities there in that product type range from 18 to 24 dwelling units to the acre. And so this skewed, the units wanted to be a little bit larger, so we're on the lower end of that dwelling units per acre scale. But we basically, these construction typologies, when you're kind of massing a site and you're laying in grid roads and you're laying in public spaces and those things, you're left with kind of blocks of a master plan, right? That you then kind of back into how many units can you really yield there within a certain typology. So, the 126 townhomes kind of starts with that process, and then we push it through the filters of all of our EIR analysis, right? And that kind of gives us the feedback of, hey, at this number of dwelling units, you're either tripping some type of a threshold that's going to require offsite mitigation, or it's going to require something else. And based on our studies, the units that we're proposing, at least in Buena Park, they did not result in any net new trips on the roads, which we thought to be valuable and helpful for the city to get more comfortable with. We already know it's a very heavily trafficked area, and so we didn't want to add more trips to the project, obviously we're removing a lot of GLA on the commercial side from that trip demand. So kind of a long way of answering the how the sausage gets made there, but that's sort of how we arrive at the number of dwelling units for the different typologies. And then we focused the affordability piece on the for rent product because it's much easier to manage and to administer on a for rent versus a for sale affordable project.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know the Irvine Land Trust and definitely Habitat for Humanity are really getting into the affordable for sale product. So I think we definitely would love to see more of that. Does anybody else, Brian or Dennis, do you want to talk about how you arrive at the number of affordable units and what kind of drives that decision?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously varies jurisdiction by jurisdiction, but typically we're going to look to, as James mentioned, fulfill the affordable requirement with for rent multifamily units. The for sale model from a market rate development model doesn't work. So we're, oftentimes we're put in a band of density, minimum and maximum density, which sometimes can be challenging when you're trying to get to that optimal unit mix in the development. James talked about the building blocks that we have to plan and figure out. So I guess for the planners and any city officials on this Zoom, provide flexibility, allow for flexibility in development, let the developers do what they do best to create that flexibility. I don't think there's any real right or wrong percentage or ratio, but we've been successful in creating a lot of new housing where we're doing multifamily housing, and say we have 1,000 units and we have 150, 15% have to be affordable. We can put those affordable units into a multifamily apartment building that has a mix of 80% market rate, 20% affordable. And that for us has been a very successful way to create affordable housing, create it in a way where you're not just creating a standalone affordable building where everyone knows that's the affordable building. We've done it where the tenancy, the spec level of the finishes for the units are indistinguishable. And that to us is the goal and very important.
On ours, we're still really early on. However, we are in conversations with city staff, looking at 10% affordable, a handful of very low and some low, and then moderate. So, but we're still pretty early on. Then our project is only for rent, so I can't speak to the other part of that question, although the plan is to put a condo map on the building for potential future sale of units. But that's where we're at right now.
One comment, Elizabeth, that some people may find interesting on affordable housing, I'll just touch on, since I'm doing a bunch of projects in the Pacific Northwest, the state of Washington, and it'd be great if the state of California figure this out. I think you see a lot more affordable housing being produced, but they use what's called the MFTE, a multifamily tax exemption program, where for a period of time where you're dedicating your units at a level of affordability, your project is exempt from paying property tax. And a lot of times what that does is that it offsets the reduction in income, right? To such an extent that developers are able to provide the very low income level of housing without requiring public subsidy. And they've seen thousands of units be produced in the state of Washington. And it'd be great if we could get that figured out in California. But for those who, maybe are aspiring to push policy, that's something that a model that's been done in other states that works really well.
That's really interesting. It almost is like a project specific tax credit. But yeah, definitely one of the challenges that we're facing is that there just isn't enough subsidy for the level of need. Awesome. I wanted to pitch this question that came in when folks registered, and it's around the question of how do we talk to our elected officials about basically convincing them about the need for new housing. And it says, what are the compelling reasons residents can use to convince their city officials to consider mixed use development in small, outdated, and low performing strip malls. So I think this is getting at like maybe those L-shaped strip malls. As an advocate, I'm going to take a stab at it, but I'll welcome your input as well. I think it's a way. I mean, the biggest selling point here is it's obvious that we have a need, right? Rena says we have a need, even though it's definitely aspirational. Those numbers are really big, but it's a way to integrate. It's a way to integrate housing into existing communities, especially when a lot of the pushback, comes from older, whiter, wealthier communities of single family homeowners. And so you have to ask the question, how do we start to, make a dent in this housing need when, a lot of the constituents are find change challenging. And there's lots of reasons for that. One is just human nature that, the status quo is always feels safe. And so, change always feels like a risk. But, I think one of the ways to get at the housing shortage is incremental change, right? I mean, we're talking here today about, big projects that are redeveloping acres that was, mall parking lots and big box retailers. But to that question about, on the small, outdated, low performing strip centers, I think that's an example of incremental change. And if you have an elected who is having a hard time with, perhaps what is perceived as the quote radical change of redeveloping an entire, mall site, maybe you can make the argument that incremental change is a way that we can start to make a dent in this need. But those are my thoughts as a housing advocate. Does anybody have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, what I always encourage the electeds to consider is, their planning staff's working on these housing elements on a regular basis, right? They're rolling requirements to meet RENA, and usually where you see pushback is when these cities all over California are forced with making very tough decisions that could potentially change kind of the community character in some of their neighborhoods, right? And where we see value and where we've seen it kind of resonate is focusing that densification where there's proximity to goods and services, there's proximity to transit, there's proximity to jobs, and also helping them understand the somewhat kind of trade-off from a traffic perspective of removing GLA from retail and replacing that with housing. How a lot of times—
Can you define GLA for folks?
Sorry, gross leasable area. So right, the amount of square footage that you have in a shopping center, that amount of square footage has a direct correlation with the amount of traffic that your shopping center is generating, right? That with a residential project, there's significantly less trips per GLA per square foot than there is with commercial uses. And so when you look at a low lot coverage kind of shopping center that's driving a certain amount of trips, if you can replace that with housing, the concerns the community has about, oh, we're bringing in housing, there's gonna be way more traffic. It just, that's not how it plays out. There may be a different peak level of traffic that you see coming out of a residential project more in the mornings versus the evenings. But getting electeds to understand that and to get comfortable with placing zoning, specific plans, housing element updates within these commercial corridors over existing retail shopping centers, and then allowing the market to make the change as the demand arrives, right? You can't really force that to happen, but what the cities can do is place this underlying, remove the uncertainty that we as developers potentially see when we're looking at a site. If we have to shoulder the cost and the risk of rezones, comp plan amendments, all of the CEQA requirements that are associated with that, a lot of times it's hard to even get to the point of planning for the housing. But if there are cities that are doing that proactively, it allows the market then to really price in the risk of the other kind of intangibles that maybe you run into in development.
Great, thank you. There's a question here about, and I think this is in reference to cities, about the property tax income versus the sales tax income. And I know in the advocacy work I've done, I've often heard from electeds that they're nervous about, giving up that retail space, because it's not a guarantee. Although we've had some studies, I think out of the Turner Center at Berkeley, that show that redeveloping property can be very, it can make up its difference, especially if the retail property or the commercial property that you're redeveloping is, if it's Prop 13 affects all property. It doesn't matter how it's, what the land use underneath it is. So I do think that there is a little bit of misinformation out there about, what cities will realize in terms of tax revenue from redeveloping into housing. But does anybody want to speak to the property tax income versus sales tax income as far as the cities?
Yeah, I will, because it's very clear when you have the numbers that redeveloping an aging mall site, whether it's a neighborhood strip mall or a regional mall, it's probably more in the order of magnitude where the property tax reassessment is going to end up. And so at the end of the day, the city is going to get a windfall of property tax revenues continuously year after year after year from the redevelopment. And so, we took a property just as an example. It wasn't a mall site, but it was assessed at $16 million. And it's now assessed at $250 million. And that took time because we had to get the site approved and redevelop it. But that's really what we're looking at, these order of magnitude jumps. And then, we do studies. We have firms that will do fiscal impact studies. We look at the job generation, not just during construction, but long-term. As you have new residents coming into your city, new family, new household formation, you're going to generate economic activity because they're going to go to eat in that city. They're going to go buy their groceries there, and they're going to shop there. At Westminster Mall, Target is going to stay, and they're going to have 5,000 new customers coming into that store, and they can buy their groceries there, they can buy their clothes there, everything. So those are some of the advantages that some of the elected officials just miss. So I think it's important to reiterate with them, and you have to do the numbers. You have to do the studies to show that, hey, a third party did this. Don't just take my word. Right. Here are the numbers. Here's the data. So it's really compelling, and it's a way to transform these communities into something new. And I think the other thing I'll add is, as a father of two young boys out of college, ready to start their professional careers and their lives, trying to figure out where they can live. It's not in coastal Southern California. They simply can't afford it. So where are your kids, grandkids going to live? How do we create opportunities that we can have attainable housing for everyone?
Yeah, I would just add that, you look at the projects we're showing you here, and this is which is very typical. Where you're seeing the attempt to build housing is not in functionally successful retail. It is not. It is always in sites like this where there's an excess parking lot or there's a massive vacancy that's not going to be occupied. I'm a retail expert. I've been doing it for 30 years. Retail has dramatically changed from the .com pressures to everything else since then. It's a completely different world. And at the end of the day, how you utilize your real estate is critical. So a 50,000 foot box that doesn't generate any sales generates no sales tax, where we can often look at and say, gosh, we could change that to 7,000, 8,000 feet of functioning retail, and we're going to generate actually more sales tax. And then, like Brian said, we just massively going to bump up the property tax benefit as well. So it's being smart with the real estate, and it ends up being a win-win. We own 70 some odd properties. We're only looking to do things like Aliso Viejo and a handful of them where it makes sense, both financially for us, if we can get it done, and for the community to utilize that real estate. But where we have successful retail, this is not something we're doing, because successful retail, you don't go through all this and risk so much investment for successful retail that's functioning. You do it with underutilized retail.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just seen, if it's functional, the landlord or the property owner is reluctant to change it because they have, you know, a viable revenue stream.
Right.
So we're at 5 minutes till time. I got a question in the chat. Is there meaningful value in citizens reaching out to elected officials in support of real estate projects? If so, how would you quantify it?
Oh, good.
I would say it is.
Elizabeth, you're
Please.
on. This is all you.
Yeah, right. That is a question for me. Yes, there is. Oh, it's immeasurable value, and
Especially
the reason
if you're if you're a resident of that community. There's nothing
Right,
more
'cause
powerful than if you're
these
a
are-
resident of that community.
Absolutely, these are folks who, you know, people run for office for different reasons, but I've never met one that was like, oh, I'm not interested in being reelected. So hearing from their constituents that there is a desire to see change in the community, that there is support for these decisions to make either incremental change or transformative change in the community, it's so important. So I would say it's the most important thing. I think elected officials, you know, it coming from your constituents versus it coming from, you know, the developer at the podium. Not that you don't give beautiful, shiny presentations and lots of data to back it up, but really, I think it is coming from residents that really is what pushes it over the edge. That's what our organization is all about. You know, we're all about trying to build community support for new housing opportunities in existing cities, especially in Orange County, because the bulk of our transit and the bulk of our job locations is in communities that are already established. And so how do we find ways to integrate new housing opportunities into those communities? So it is invaluable. I couldn't even begin to quantify it for you because of just how valuable it is. So yeah, so just definitely, I was at a conference, I was speaking on a panel a couple of years ago, and I made the comment that, you know, we all live somewhere, we all vote somewhere. And I really do believe, I'm sure, I think looking at the registrations, I know a lot of people on this webinar are, you know, in the profession or in an adjacent profession to development, architects. You live somewhere, you vote somewhere. So get involved in your local community in supporting housing projects, because until it's personal, we're not going to see change. It really has to be personal. And that's, you know, what keeps me going is a firm belief that the next generation needs a place to live. And it is a social justice issue, because the next generation is the most diverse generation that we have seen, certainly in California and all over the country. And so being supportive of low-income people, people of color, you know, the next generation, which is the most diverse, you by default have to be in support of new housing opportunities, affordable housing, and first-time homebuyer opportunities. We work across the income spectrum, and I cannot tell you how moving it was for me emotionally to recently be in a room with a person who wants to be a homeowner. They have a desire to be a homeowner, and that is something that I think is baked into the fabric of America. And so, you know, getting folks on the pathway to achieving that, I think, is a goal. Not everyone wants it, but enough people want it that we should be creating that opportunity for the next generation. So we are literally 1 minute until time. Does anybody have any final questions that you want to dump in the chat? Otherwise, I did see a question earlier. They wanted to know what the name of the organization was that produced that I called the E-Tail Revolution study. And it was the Orange County Business Council. I think they're at ocbc.org. And if you look for E-Tail Revolution, I think it'll come up. Let's see, are we getting any final questions?
Elizabeth, while you're looking at that, we make it really easy on our project website. You can just click on a link and it allows you to send a letter support to the city council. So villagebuenapark.com. You can go there, and it makes it super easy for you, but it does. And I'll echo what you said. It goes a long way. So appreciate anyone who's willing to do that.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We're right on time, and I'm not seeing any final questions, but I just really want to thank you for sharing your what projects you have in process with us, and really want to echo what we've all been saying, that, you know, we have to get on board at the local level, right? Wherever you live is probably where, you know, you vote. So having that connection to your own hometown and keeping tabs on what's going on there is super important. So
Thank you,
thank
Elizabeth.
you. Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Elizabeth.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for joining, and I hope that everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Bye.